Welcome, my friend, to Next Level Change Success. I'm Therese, a change strategist and practitioner with over 20 years of experience designing and delivering impactful change programs across various industries. In this podcast, I share real-world practical strategies to help you create and deliver positive change experiences, whether you're a leader, practitioner, or someone looking to bring new ways of working to life. In today's fast-paced world, change is constant. Here we focus on how you can put people at the centre of your change strategy, because people with a sense of purpose are the most important link in driving performance. So if you're ready to create meaningful change and achieve all the success that comes with it, keep listening. Together, let's change the conversation and take it to the next level. Hello. Welcome to another episode of Next Level Change Success. My name is Therese and I'm the founder of myvirtualchangemanager.com. I'd like to acknowledge that I am recording on Therese country and pay my respects to the traditional owners and custodians on the land on which I am recording. So today I want to talk about the 3 main points of friction that you might be experiencing with your change. And when I talk about friction, I really liked the concept and the word, because in a lot of the digital landscape, they talk about removing points of friction to allow a purchase to happen, for example. And what this is all about is the blocks in an experience. It's like where people want to engage with you, but they're just finding it too hard because, just like the word friction says, just like the word friction sounds, there's too much static, there's too much difficulty in the process for people to get on board with your change. And so I want to talk about 3 typical areas that you need to focus on if you're introducing change. And this is whether you're a leader, whether you're an influencer, or whether you're a change practitioner. These are typically will come up at some stage, no doubt, in your change. The first one is friction when it comes to your messaging. So is your messaging tailored to the audience? Such a simple thing, yet so many people really struggle with this concept. And because I have marketing background, one of the fundamentals I always had ingrained in me was tailoring messaging to audiences. In marketing terms, we call it the segments. Tailoring the messages so that they're relevant to the individual. And the reason why sometimes there's friction is because the one-size-fits-all concept does not work in change. In fact, it is contradictory to change. So you need to tailor. You might have overarching messaging, not a problem with that. But eventually, as you work through the change, you need to tailor or work with business areas to tweak the messaging so it is relevant. And whether that's working with the leaders so that they can tailor your overarching message to their people, or whether it is identifying and analysing people who are impacted so that you can segment people in like-for-like groups so that you can then tailor to that group so that their journey is frictionless, which means you're tailoring what they need to do, when they need to do it, based on their current profile or the segment that they sit in. That is how you decrease friction when it comes to messaging and also the experience. Know your audience, know your segments, group people based on whether it's the impact that they're going to experience. So you can group like groups, even though they might be across different divisions. So how you segment your groups is really, really important when it comes to change and to creating a frictionless experience as much as possible. So that's one way. Second way is that there's no two-way communication. There's no feedback channel for people to provide input or to be heard through the change process. Even if you're relying on leaders to brief teams in their team meetings, when there are questions, if it's just left to the leader and that there's no other avenue for people to potentially go to a central intranet page or a mailbox, an email box to be able to send feedback, to send questions, then it becomes a one-way conversation. And I'm pretty sure that if you sat in a cafe and someone was talking at you the whole time, you would not appreciate it and you wouldn't hang around for it. So if you've got a change happening, why are you allowing that scenario to play out for your people when there's a change happening in an organization? Have a feedback loop that people can access and safely. And if someone asks a question, acknowledge it, go back to them, close it out. Else it causes friction, and friction decreases trust in the change and decreases trust in leadership. Third area of friction can be leadership ownership, engagement, true change leadership. And the biggest element which could be causing a lack of engagement, ownership, is that you could be chopping down the wrong forest completely by not actually engaging leaders whose teams are impacted the most. So do not line up your change sponsorship just with leaders who are funding the project or funding the piece of work, or if you're sitting in a support services area and you're influencing for change across business areas, you need to engage business leadership teams. You need to put in the effort and the time so that they understand the change, they can communicate the change, and they're on board. If they've been given no action to take, and if all you're doing is providing them with a briefing pack for them to go and brief their teams, sure, that's an action, but it's one that they could very well just do notionally and distribute the pack via cascade, via email, versus present and engage their teams on a conversation. I would definitely be looking to brief the leaders where they're having to brief their team, gather questions, provide those questions, have a follow-up session for all leaders so that they can then come back centrally to the project and provide their feedback that their teams might have had, and really validate that the message is getting through and that leaders in fact are briefing their teams. This can be also something you do is triangulate the feedback that you might be receiving from the central mailbox to then correlate that to leaders who have briefed their people. Or if you haven't heard anything from certain teams, you might want to go and have conversations with some team members just to double check what they're aware of. Are they aware of the change? Get some representatives on a reference group. If you've got concerns in a certain area around cascade of information or sharing of information or engagement. Thus coming back to the second point of making sure there's a two-way conversation and multiple avenues for people to provide feedback. And then looking at, from the leadership perspective, if there are teams that are silent or you haven't heard anything from them, you do want to validate that they're across the change before you are ready to go live, because you don't want to find out in the last minute that actually there hasn't been any communication. And that once again causes friction, because once a change goes in, the impact is felt. That can have teams really arc up, and not from the intent of wanting to share information or have leaders take ownership, but it's certainly friction you do not want to arise because you haven't made every effort prior to the change taking effect to ensure that leaders are doing what they need to do. And sometimes that isn't because leaders are looking to erode the change. The leadership roles, as I talk about often, are always strapped for time. They're always just struggling to prioritize work that they want done versus project work that might be, or other people's work that might also be a priority. If they're really skilled in change leadership, that shouldn't be such an issue, but it can be a problem. And friction in the system is definitely also caused if leaders haven't had time to digest the message before they have to share the message. So ensure that all leaders are given the respect of the role, which is given enough time to understand, given a forum in which they can ask questions so that they can engage with the material, and then be clear around the expectation that they're going to be sharing that information going forward and owning the change going forward. the more tasks or the more relevance that you can make the message to the leaders in their business context, the better, especially for the areas who are high on the impact rating and where their own teams might have to change their processes, might have to change the way they engage with other teams as a result of the change you're bringing in. And so you want to ensure that the leaders are really across that they understand the gravity of the change for their team, because they might want to ask for extra help. They might want to make sure that they're across the change more than they normally would because of the size of the impact on their team, and knowing that their team's going to come to them with issues. And so you want to ensure, again, that you have given the leaders enough time to engage with the change, answer their questions. It might mean you're addressing and undertaking some future change activities or further change activities so that readiness is where it needs to be prior to go live. But these are the things you definitely want to undertake and make sure you're engaging the right leaders. So 3 key areas of friction: messaging, not tailoring the messaging. It's going to be hard for people to engage in messaging that is high level, is potentially too broad, not specific enough, not understanding the gravity of the impact on them because of the way the messaging is framed. It might be too positive for them, considering that they're impacted greatly, and they might be misinterpreting information because they might think certain change is going to affect their role. All of these things need to be looked at, removing that friction when it comes to your messaging. Second one, no feedback channels apart from their leader. And then therefore, if they don't feel safe with their leader, they're not going to raise the questions that you actually need to know as a change manager or as part of the core project team or the core influencer. When you're looking at bringing change in, you can only adapt if you get that feedback. And so having multiple feedback channels is really critical, and encouraging people to use them and responding to them and engaging with them, really, really important. And then also from a leadership perspective, last but certainly not least, is ensuring your leaders, if there's friction in the leadership team who's meant to be actively ambassadoring the change and advocating for the change, and if they don't have a sense of ownership around the change, it's going to be friction all the way through, and it's going to be difficult to get your change in. So 3 areas to have a look at for sure. And I'm going to add, lastly, one more, which is design, the design element. And I talk about this in the Change Diamond of Success. Design, if your design is not well engaged, not well informed, not worked through with those who are impacted, so that the design is fit for purpose, but also that it can extend a bit around the possibility, because you can't design sometimes within only the mindset of individuals who are impacted because they don't know what they don't know. I think it was Henry Ford who said if I asked the people for what they wanted, they'd ask for a faster horse when the horse and cart, when he invented the car. So some of it is showing people possibility, getting people out of their mindsets around existing ways of working, because then they design just based on their current state. Being able to manage that friction point of possibility is really powerful when it comes to change. And it is really important as well when you're designing your solution and system. Do not think that you are the expert in it. Allow the teams to have a say, allow them to contribute to it. They will own it better. So if you simply just determine the solution, want to roll it out, and then expect everyone to get on board, that is going to be, I can sense the friction all the way through that process. And so you really want to ensure that you avoid that. So collaboration at its core, co-design at its core, is about that listening. And I guess it lends itself to that concept of feedback and feedback channels, but certainly co-design is one step further and deeper. And balancing being able to manage people's expectations, but also identify opportunity and stretch people's mindsets around what is possible during that design process, if you have people who are long tenured or who are very fixed in their thinking. So working with them around a growth mindset and possibility is important when you come to introduce change and especially solutions. So 4 areas, in fact, to look at from a change perspective. So I hope this has given you some food for thought if you are in the full throes of delivering change, planning for change, and you want to decrease the amount of friction and get momentum with your change. Friction, of course, slows all momentum. If you think about a swimmer, a cyclist, they try to streamline as much as possible, and this is all part of refining and streamlining your change practices so that you can get the best outcome for your organisation, for your teams, for your departments, and also for yourself. So come to myvirtualchangemanager.com if these type of conversations are ones that you're wanting to continue to link through to. And we have a lot going on. We always have a lot going on. And I would like to thank you for listening. Share this with someone who might need to hear this today. Leave a review, reach out, DM us on Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn, also on Facebook. So all of the social media platforms and more. And definitely always like to have a conversation with listeners of this podcast. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. And just remember that change matters because your people, you, your organisation, your outcomes, and your sense of purpose, it all matters. Have a great day. Thanks for listening.